the reason most of you are here tonight to hear about seabirds along the Oregon coast. We're very happy to have Shawn Stephensen here tonight from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He has been all over the place, if we can say that. So he got his Bachelor of Science from Utah State University, headed up to Masters up in Alaska, and has worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for 34 years now. He works with some of our great partners, including Kate here sitting in front, based out of the Newport office here at Hatfield. Chargers here, that's a good thing. And has done conducting contaminant surveys, 14 years of migratory bird management in Anchorage, and 16 years with the Oregon Coast National Wildlife Refuge Complex here in Newport. So here to talk about kind of the work they've done, the work they're doing, and maybe a glimpse into the future as well about it. Some of the projects that are specific to some of these seabirds out along the coast and then the islands off the coast. So I'll just let Shawn get up here, and please welcome Shawn to the podium.
Well, you know, I'm getting a little hungry. I thought there was going to be snacks here. No snacks. All right. So can you hear me okay?
Great.
All right, great. You know, I usually like to walk around a little bit, but I'm stuck here behind the computer because of the microphone and the camera. So I'm just going to stay in one spot. Okay, so let's talk about the Oregon Coast National Wildlife Refuge Complex. It spans the entire Oregon coast. Approximately 3,600 total acres is what we manage. And here's a trivia question. How many rocks, reefs, or islands are along the Oregon coast?
1,854.
Answers on the phone.
Correct. So I was listening to a radio station a while back, and that was a trivia question. And I could have won a $20 gift card. But I didn't say that. I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. There's only one island that we do not own, the Fish and Wildlife Service does not own, and that's Terrible Tilly, Tillamook Rock.
Oh.
We have an easement, a conservation easement, but we don't own that particular island. So we manage a lot of old growth forest, estuaries, marsh, and oceanic habitats, support a lot of different wildlife in those. And here is a map of Oregon that shows all of the refuges along the coast. We've got Cape Mears, Three Arch Rocks, Nestucca Bay, Siletz Bay, Bandon Marsh, and then the red dots along the coastline are Oregon Islands National Wildlife Refuge. So a little background history, back in the early 1900s, there were two fellows, William Finley and Herman Pullman, and they were running around the coast of Oregon, and they found Three Arch Rocks, and they said, "Boy, there's a lot of resources here," and the local people were target practicing with seabirds, shooting them and disturbing the birds and the marine mammals. And these two guys said, we need to talk to the president of the United States and get this place secured. And so they went to President Roosevelt, and he decided to make it a national wildlife refuge in 1907. It's the oldest refuge west of the Mississippi. So let's talk about seabirds. So how do I make that play? So I've got some videos in this presentation. Okay, here we go. So that video in the center is Yaquina Head, Colony Rock. We have a lot of seabirds along the coast, and we've got 15 different species at approximately 400 different colonies. And we have a publication, it's back there on the table. It's the catalog of Oregon seabird colonies. We've also got a database that stores all of the seabird information. And you can see the total estimate. Oh, it looks like the branch cormorants are off the center, but we have approximately 1.3 million breeding seabirds along the Oregon coast. And how do we know that? Well, every year we get in a helicopter, take the doors off, and we hang out the side and take photographs of all surface nesting seabird colonies along the coast. It's quite a ride, let me tell you. It's very exhilarating. We take approximately 10,000 photos each year of all those different colonies. And we take the photos back to the office and we count the number of nests or birds in the photographs. And that's how we determine the breeding population for those colonies. Now, when I got here to Oregon in 2007, they were conducting the surveys with 35 millimeter slide film. We didn't have digital cameras. And so if you can imagine up in a helicopter, every 36 pictures, you would have to open the camera up and put new film in and close it back up and hope that everything was good. And you wouldn't know that until you went to get the film processed. And we had a disaster one year where the film was bad and all of our photographs were no good. They were just blank. And then we would take the 35 millimeter slides and project them up onto a wall and take onto a whiteboard and take a marker and dot the nests or birds on this whiteboard. And I said, there has got to be a better way. I can't do this. So a couple of years later, we transitioned into digital cameras, and we now count the birds with the computer, GIS software. And so here's a picture of Colony Rocket. You went ahead. Any idea? So those little dark spots, those are common murre, and there are a few cormorants nesting mixed in there. Any idea how many birds are on that rock?
62,205.
You know the number. That's a little bit high. In this picture, there are approximately 36,000 birds. And so this is a picture before we counted them with the GIS software. And that's a picture afterwards. So you dot each bird in that photograph. And so the bigger green dots, those are cormorants, and the yellow dots are murres. And that's how we come up with that. Much better than the old method of counting the dots on the whiteboard. Because sometimes on the whiteboard, you would accidentally erase the dots, and then you'd have to start over. It was really a pain. So this is much better. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some projects that we've done in the past and what we're doing right now and in the future. So the tufted puffin, it's an iconic seabird, but the birds are not doing the greatest. Their numbers have declined over the years. And in 2021, we decided that we needed to survey tufted puffins and estimate their breeding population. So we surveyed all of the historical colonies, which there were 67 historical colonies. And we visited each site and trying to find puffins and count them. And then we wrote a report. We did a habitat assessment during the survey. We collected tufted puffin samples, eggshells, bird feathers, birds, etc. And this is the results. So in 1979, there were approximately, what does it say there? 6,000 or so birds. In 1988, there were approximately 5,000 birds. In 2008, when I first got here, we did a survey and we documented only a couple of hundred birds. And then in 2021, we documented a little over 500 birds. So an order of magnitude decline in the tufted puffin population since 1988. Huge red flags. We're trying to figure out what's going on there. Where are they going? There's a lot of unanswered questions we've got to deal with. Oh, and while I'm giving this presentation, I want this to be fun and interactive. So if you have a question, just shout it out and I'll take the questions as they come. And if, we can save them till the end also, but you may forget what you want to ask me. So feel free to shout out. Okay. So this video here is a pair of tufted puffins at Haystack Rock that are billing. It's a mating ritual. Just a local citizen took this video. I can't take credit for that. But, so there are a lot of data gaps that we need to fill. And so there's a lot of few different studies that are going on. We are doing population genetics, where we collect samples and turn them into a lab, and they can tell us if the birds are related to other birds in the ecosystem. We're collecting diet information to figure out what they're eating. We have several students at Oregon State University that are working on tufted puffin studies. A master's student, Noah, he's taking photographs of adults bringing food, fish back to their chicks and documenting that. There's a PhD student, Karina, who is conducting habitat assessments, looking at the habitat changes throughout time. So in 2021, when we did the coastwide survey, I would pull up to a rock where puffins historically nested, and it was a bare rock. Now, puffins can nest in crevices, but they prefer soil and vegetation, and they can burrow a hole into the soil and they nest in there. And I found it kind of strange that puffins used to nest at a place that had no soil or vegetation. So we got together with Karina, and she's looking at changes through time, habitat changes through time. Another student, Katie, she is putting geolocators, transmitters on birds in Alaska, and we're hoping that we can do the same here in Oregon. And the Friends of Haystack Rock, Cannon Beach, they're a friends group, and they recently hired a tufted puffin coordinator, a person that can get everybody together and try and solve problems, etc. Okay, I don't have to click on the mouse. I can just push the arrow and then we'll play. So I'm learning. All right. For the past 12 years or so, we've had a study at Haystack Rock at Cannon Beach where we're monitoring the puffins. We have an observer that spends, I'm thinking probably 30 to 40 hours a week. He's a volunteer, and he monitors the birds. He counts the number of birds in the air, on the land, and in the water. And then he's also keeping track of puffin burrow entrances and birds that come and go out of those burrows. And we can estimate a breeding population at Haystack Rock with that data he collects. And it's been fairly consistent throughout the years since we started the study, right around 120 or so birds. But we've seen some declines in the past few years, and we're hoping that that's not a trend. that continues, but, we'll see. Okay, we last summer, at Goat Island. Goat Island is an island near Brookings, down south, near the California border. We did a survey, an aerial survey, and found that there were some invasive plant species on that island. And we had never, in the past, had never tried to control invasive species on an island. So it was the first time that we tried that last year. It was kind of hit and miss. We did injure a few plants, but they're still there, and we're going to go out again this year and try it. Tufted puffins also nest on that island, and we built some nest boxes, and we have some decoys, and I have some examples of decoys back there on the table if you're interested. And we placed cameras near those nest boxes. We also found that there were predators on Goat Island, and we found out that the river otters and mink were predating the seabirds on that island. And so this summer, we have a new predator control biologist technician that will be trying to control those predators on the offshore islands. And again, we're collecting genetic samples, and a big shout out to Coast Guard, because they helped us get our equipment out to Goat Island from the Brookings Airport. We had about 3,000 pounds worth of gear, and I didn't want to carry all of that 3,000 pounds of gear up a steep cliff and onto that island. So I called Coast Guard and I said, hey, can you help us out? And they did. They brought their helicopter out, and we transported a bunch of gear out there. They're a great partner. Now a little bit closer to home here, you probably all know Gold Rock, that's near Depot Bay. We've designed several different styles of nest boxes, from cement to plywood. Even we've got a irrigation control valve box that's on the right-hand side. And so we put a couple of these nest boxes on Goat Island last year, and we put a camera inside the nest box, and then the camera recorded temperatures. And we found that those plywood nest boxes, those camouflage ones, some of them were reaching over 100 degrees inside that box. And that's a bit too warm for baby birds. So we are doing a study at Gold Rock where we place these nest boxes out there, and we have eye buttons, temperature eye buttons that record the temperature inside the box every 90 minutes. And we just placed them out there last week. It's not too long ago, and we'll collect the boxes at the end of the summer after the breeding season, and we'll see the differences in the temperatures of the different styles of boxes. We've painted some of them white, and we're thinking that the white ones will be a little bit cooler. Now, you may have heard of the Tristan oil spill. This happened, 20 years ago or so. And this vessel released about 12,000 gallons of fuel oil into the ocean, and it caused some damage to the seabirds and the habitat. And we have submitted a proposal of $3.2 million to try to restore some damage done to the seabirds, in particular rhinoceros auklets, which are a close relative to tufted puffins. Hunter's Island is near Gold Beach, and that's the site where we're going to be conducting this study if we get this money. I'm not sure if we'll get $3.2 million, but maybe we'll get 3.2 thousand, I don't know. Sounds like a lot of money, but this project would last 10 years and we could do a lot of good work with that money. So keep your fingers crossed that we get this. Now, we did a survey last summer and you'll see that photograph with the little dots. There are 249 rhinoceros auklet burrows that we documented at that site. And we're going to continue to monitor those puffin burrows and the birds. And this summer, we are going to put tags on the rhinoceros auklets to see where they're going, where they're flying to during the breeding season.
Wait, what are they doing in that middle picture?
So they're putting their hand and arm inside the rhinoceros auklet burrow, and that's what they do. They're like puffins. They've got soil burrows. And
Like their whole arm.
they're grubbing. That's what it's called, grubbing, and they're trying to see if there's a bird or a chick in there. And then the unit that, we've got an RTK unit, very high-tech GPS system that can actually it's within like a couple of centimeters. So we're going to survey that colony again this summer.
Shawn,
Yes.
do you tag any of those birds so they can track with the Modus, that new technology?
So I have to ask your question or say your question.
Yep.
So Paul is asking whether we're tagging the birds or not. So the new Modus system can detect the birds. We are not. We're not planning on putting anything like that on the birds yet.
All those, you don't mind me interrupting, the Modus tags are much more effective for like tracking migration than they are for like little smaller movement sites or smaller movements of birds. So in the case of Oregon, there's Modus towers on land. If there were Modus towers out in the water, you might be able to track their movements, but I think there's satellite flags that are going on.
Correct.
So these will be higher definition on the location, with better locations. Types of reviews.
Okay, so we also are starting a new productivity monitoring program this year. We plan to have monitoring sites across the Oregon coast from the north, the central, and the south coast, but our staff is limited and we don't have the resources to do that. So we're focusing on just 4 sites this summer, and they're all in the northern part of Oregon. But we're going to be monitoring cormorants, murres, and possibly gulls. It just depends upon what birds are nesting at the monitoring sites. We're also assisting other agencies to do black oyster catcher monitoring, and that's a coastwide program. And monitoring at Uquinna Head, which has been occurring for the past, as long as I've been here. They're monitoring productivity of murres and cormorants also. And they're documenting disturbance. We have, unfortunately, a fair amount of disturbance, not only predators and human disturbance, but low-flying aircraft. It's a constant problem.
Oh.
And we're working with others to minimize that disturbance. We're also helping Dr. Rachel Orban from Oregon State University with some monitoring of leech storm petrels on a few islands down south. We set out sound recorders that records the calls of the birds, and they're able to derive densities from those calls. And basically, the question of what were they doing on the ground, sticking their hand in the burrows? Well, that's a very invasive way to check a nest. And so this method with these sound recorders is less invasive. And so it's a good way to get some good information that won't negatively affect the birds. Another student at Oregon State University, Luke, he's a master's student. He is doing a predator study. And he is the one, he has set up some cameras out there on a few islands, and he is the one that discovered the mink on Goat Island. You'll see that center picture, that lower center picture of two mink out there. And then we've got river otters that are carrying off chicks. And then we've also documented rats on Saddle Rock, which we are going to take care of here shortly. Once we get our predator tech out there, we're gonna get rid of those rats. Unfortunately, the mink and the river otter, we can't control those yet because our environmental assessment does not include those species. The ones that we can control are fox, raccoons, rats, and cats. Any other species, we have to go through a process to amend the EA, and we're in that process right now. Anyway, Luke is doing some incredible work out there. He's doing systematic scat surveys, trying to figure out what the predators are eating. And they're eating a lot of leech storm petrels. And he's going to be doing a study where he's live trapping voles to do some analysis with those, but that's next year. Another person, a PhD student, Keenan, has put transmitters on leech storm petrels to figure out where they're going during the summer. And that picture in the center of the screen shows their track, where they flew to. And if you'll notice that there is a wind energy site that the birds are flying through. And that's somewhat concerning because it's a proposed wind energy site, and we have these storm petrels that are flying through that area, and so we have to release that information to the developers and see what can be done there. And the rhinoceros auklet tagging project will also show where the birds are going to, and they may or may not be flying through that proposed wind energy site. But this is an interesting study, and they're planning to tag a few more this year. They were able to deploy 12 tags and they recovered 9. So what you have to do is you put the tag on the bird, and then a few days later, you have to recapture that same bird to download the data. So time intensive. We're working with a few different people on science support partnership projects. Josh Adams, who some of you might know, is going to be here this summer, and we're going to develop a survey protocol for burrow nesting seabird species. We were awarded some money for that, and hopefully we'll have some good products. And then Karina, the PhD student, she's continuing to work on habitat assessment. Okay, so here's my spiel. We need help. I am the only biologist for the Fish and Wildlife Service at the Oregon Coast National Wildlife Refuge Complex. I can't do it all. I mean, I can do it all, but it would take me a long time to do it all. We need help. And so I'm soliciting, if you or you have friends, grandkids, brothers, sisters, I've got a sign-up sheet on the back on that table and we're looking for help because we've got, we're doing predator work. We're getting on a bunch of different islands and treating invasive plant species. We're setting up nest boxes. We're monitoring productivity of seabirds along the coast at 4 different sites. And we have limited capabilities. And so without volunteers' help, it's going to be very difficult for us to get all this work done. So we have some volunteers that have helped us in the past and will continue to help us, but we need more. So please, if you know of someone that would like to volunteer, Cheryl, okay, yes, we'll sign you up and you can come along.
Do volunteers need any experience, any particular
No,
experience?
we will train you.
Perfect.
You just have to, you just, so some of the work will be somewhat strenuous. You've got to be able to get on and off a boat on shore. So that's how we do that. We just have people jump off the boat and get onto the shore. And there's some islands that are steep and you'll have to climb. Very uneven terrain, can be slippery, but it's fun. It's great to get out there and you feel good at the end of the day because you're making a difference. We're also conducting surveys by boat. We're going to float around Three Arch Rocks and do a tufted puffin survey this summer. So there's a lot of different things. You can put on the sign-up sheet what you're interested in, if it's in a particular species that you want to help out with. Or you can just put, I'll do anything, and then we'll put you somewhere and make use of you. Okay, and this is the Fish and Wildlife Services, what is this? This is our mission statement, Okay, that's it. Okay, any questions? And I guess Zoom land can ask questions too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a big picture question, and, you know, the oceans are absorbing 90% of the excess heat caused by anthropocentric, emission, that being us, and I have a fairly negative outlook on the ability of Homo sapiens to really address climate change. And I'm just sort of wondering, I mean, it just sort of strikes me as that it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to maintain these species along the Oregon coast that have, adapted to a certain type of temperature range. So just sort of wondering, what's the big picture of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about, what to do about this problem?
Starting off with an easy question.
Yeah.
Try to repeat.
That's a very complex, so out in Zoom land, this gentleman is asking about climate change and what the Fish and Wildlife Service is going to do about it and how we can help. I don't know the answer to that question. It's very complicated, but I do know that climate change is probably related to population declines in seabirds. We have to all do our part, not just the Fish and Wildlife Service. It's everybody that's got to step up and contribute to help solve the climate change issues. That's the best answer I got.
On a good news story, I believe, can you update us on the snowy plover population trend?
Snowy plover, so Paul is asking about snowy plover trends along the Oregon coast. The numbers are up in the last few years. I think we have, you're asking the wrong person, but the numbers are up and they're nesting in new locations. And there's continual habitat work to clear out the vegetation. They like to nest in open sandy areas. And we have a biologist, Cheryl, who works in my office that can answer your question much better,
I'm the
but
standing plover guy if you want plover facts. So from Cheryl's numbers, the last breeding survey was 443 adults in our region, which is Oregon, Washington. Oregon, more good news, Oregon's met its recovery goal and has for a number of seasons. However, it's a regional based system with including California. California and Washington have not met the recovery goals, mostly due to a combination of population pressure and habitat loss. But good news is, there's a great guy up at Ledbetter Point who provides winter forage for the Oregon plovers. They like flying up there. And shout out to, what's his name, Kate? The guy at Ledbetter Point.
I don't know.
He's super awesome. The name's escaped me, but what the plovers like at Ledbetter is there's a bunch of ground cover and beach plants up there, and they like to go up there. Anyway, good news is Oregon's best recovery goal.
so those in Zoom land, 443 was what were counted the last year. And we've met our, what'd you say, the concert recovery plan goals?
Under the habitat conservation.
Okay. Snowy plovers are doing better.
Endless plover facts.
Okay, Amy on.
So we have a question from Zoom. When you do your nest surveying and invasive species work, do you work outside of the nesting season to avoid interfering with them?
So the question is, when we're treating invasive plants on islands, are we working outside of the nesting season? No, we are not. That's when we have to treat the invasive plants, is when they're actively growing. And that's the only way we can treat them. So we take precautionary measures. We're treating plants in Leach's storm petrel nesting areas. And we wear snowshoes to reduce the risk of crushing the burrows where the birds are at. And the chemicals that we use are very friendly, as friendly as they can get. And it dries quickly. And so the birds are, they don't get it on their feathers or anything like that as they come and go. And so we do it during the day, and the storm petrels are nocturnal, so they're active during the night. And so we take measures the best we can, because we are in their breeding area during the breeding season. But our project leader, who is very gung-ho about this project, he says sometimes you have to sacrifice a few to save many. And so we could be affecting the Leach's storm petrel population on certain locations of the island. But the good news is the invasive plants are only on certain portions of the island. It doesn't cover the entire island. And the storm petrels that are nesting in those infested areas are very few. Paul?
You haven't spoken about the prey base, status of herring as an example. Is that an issue that we should be concerned about?
It is, but that's not, I don't deal with the prey base. It's related to climate change, and I think it's a huge factor that's causing declines. You know, the birds can't get to the fish, the prey in the water column there because of the temperature of the water. So, I mean, there's a lot of discussion there. But that's not a part of my program, and so I can't intelligently answer any questions about the prey base.
A little bit off topic, but you seem very, very knowledgeable and passionate about like what you spoke about today. How did you get into this work, if that's, I guess,
Okay,
you don't mind answering a question like that?
fair question. So question is how did I get into this job? So, so I'm at actually 35 years with the Fish and Wildlife Service. And my father was a wildlife biologist for the Fish and Wildlife Service. And he was with the service for like 32 years or so, and then he retired. And I would go out with him as a kid during the summer and would tag along while he's doing his work. And it was just ingrained in me, and I was excited to work outdoors. I mean, with any job, you've got to work inside on a computer for part of the time, but I've stayed in the wildlife biologist position for a reason, because I like to go outside and work, get my hands dirty and stuff, rather than sitting at a computer managing people. And so that's how I got into it. It was really my father that led me to be a biologist. And I don't regret it. It's been, and the Fish and Wildlife Service is a great agency. Just the mission statement right there says it all. I wouldn't do anything different.
Thanks to your.
Yeah, we have one more question on Zoom. Someone is wondering, do you do any collaboration with local indigenous communities to incorporate TEK into your work?
Are we incorporating indigenous peoples? What's TEK?
Traditional ecological knowledge.
Oh. Technical, educational knowledge, something like that. Traditional. We work with several tribes along the coast, and particularly Hunter's Island, where we're doing a lot of work. We have taken members of the tribe out with us on the island when they go, and they're looking for, you know, artifacts or whatever. That's a known site for archaeological things. And so we do work with them. And then also at Gregory Point, there's an island, Chief's Island, that has a historical puffin colony on it. And we work with the tribe there to gain access to that island. But as far as their traditional knowledge goes, I know the Fish and Wildlife Service has programs, especially in Alaska, where I was at for 14 years. We had people working with the tribes and the local people to gather their information that they know, because it's very valuable. They're very valuable information. Okay, I limit the questions to that many. So, if you have more, you can see me afterwards. I know you've got other things we gotta do, so I'll be back there by that table. And please don't forget that sign-up sheet for volunteers is back there. I've got some brochures back there if you wanna take them home. And you can't have my decoys, but you can look at them. And I'll be back there, and if you got questions, just come and see me.